Welcome to Dark Case Diaries. Join us as we uncover true crime stories, shocking investigations, and the hidden truths behind some of the world's most fascinating cases. Let's begin.
Okay, let's dive right in and unpack one of the most baffling and honestly chilling criminal investigations in Utah's history. We're looking at a case that starts as a completely routine neighborhood call, but man, it quickly spirals into this incredibly dark psychological puzzle. Like, how does a seemingly normal suburban home hide decades of unspeakable secrets? Well, let's find out.
On April 12, 2014, the Pleasant Grove police received this exact, horrifying 911 call. The guy on the line, a man named Darren West, and he was audibly shaken. Now just imagine being the responding officer for a second. You pull up to a typical suburban home, you're greeted by an open garage door, and it looks like a family just trying to do some spring cleaning. But the words spoken on that 911 call mark the exact moment an ordinary afternoon just absolutely shattered into a waking nightmare. It set this entire mystery into motion.
So, to really understand how Darren even stumbled onto this, we have to look at the timeline. Darren actually wasn't living in the house at the time. He had literally just returned home on a 48-hour pass after an 8-year prison stint for drug charges. He was really just trying to get his life back in order. And, part of that meant finally cleaning out a garage that had been accumulating junk since 2006. It was a completely voluntary, innocent act of housekeeping. But that's exactly what cracked the case wide open. What officers found inside that garage instantly turned a standard welfare check into a full-blown homicide investigation. They found an ordinary fruit box, but it was heavily sealed with electrical tape. And inside that, a bag wrapped in layer upon layer of duct tape. It was immediately clear to investigators that this was no tragic accident. I mean, the sheer amount of tape pointed to a desperate, calculated effort to keep whatever was inside hidden forever. Inside that bag, they found the fully decomposed body of an infant. Now, Darren's immediate reaction here is super telling. He didn't just call the police. He actually called his wife, Megan Huntsman, confronting her before the cops even took over the scene. Megan, who didn't live in the house anymore, by the way, she was out in West Valley with a new boyfriend, she actually begged him not to call the cops. But Darren, he demanded a police presence anyway.
Right, so Detective Beckstrom brings Megan in for questioning. And her initial story, well, it was somewhat plausible for a really tragic scenario. She claimed she was heavily addicted to meth, had a stillborn baby in the bathroom back in 2006, right after Darren went to prison, panicked, and hid it. Okay, but here's exactly where the story falls apart. The reality of the crime scene was completely different. Officers were staring at a garage with hundreds of boxes stacked from floor to ceiling. And you have to wonder, if she hid one, what else is in there?
Unfortunately, the answer came horribly fast. The investigation escalated rapidly when officers who were sifting through this really foul-smelling garage opened another heavily padded box, unwrapped more plastic and tape, and found a second child. Suddenly, that whole isolated panic mistake narrative that Megan was trying to sell, it totally evaporated. The officers on the scene felt a wave of absolute dread. What they were looking at wasn't a single tragedy anymore. It was a pattern. This brings us to a really crucial point in the interrogation, right after this discovery. When confronted with the fact that his team had just found a second baby, Megan just completely dropped her guard. Instead of denying it, she casually delivered this absolute bombshell. She admitted, "I have hid every one of them. There's others." It's one of those spine-chilling moments when the suspect realizes the physical evidence has entirely outpaced their lies. Back at the house, the tension was becoming unbearable. It had turned into an emotionally draining and physically exhausting day for the 20 to 30 officers meticulously combing through the property. And it didn't take long before they uncovered a third body. This one was packed tightly in a box, sealed with layers of duct tape, wrapped in a plastic bag, and covered in vinyl. The sheer repetition of these concealment methods, it showed a deeply disturbing methodical process.
And the tension only grew, because the count inexplicably continued to rise. A fourth, and then a fifth body were discovered. These ones were found hidden under some blankets and bath towels in the bottom left corner of a cubby. The investigators described the feeling in the air as pure dread, mixed with this grim determination to find out what actually happened. The scale of the horrific secret Megan had kept for over a decade was literally expanding by the hour.
Meanwhile, the interrogation was entering completely uncharted territory. When the stunned detective pressed Megan on exactly how many babies were actually in that garage, her response completely shifted the magnitude of the whole investigation. She couldn't remember. She blamed her heavy drug use, meth and alcohol, saying it ruined her memory, and then she casually offered this chilling estimate. She said, "I'd say 8 or 9. Just think about that for a second. She had done this so many times she had literally lost count of her own victims. Ultimately, the meticulous search of the garage and the entire property concluded. They even searched Megan's new residence in West Valley just to be safe. But the final, staggering count from the garage was 7. 7 deceased infants, systematically packaged and hidden in plain sight, just sitting right there while the family went about their daily lives for years. The sheer volume of evidence was overwhelming, but now the detectives needed the absolute truth of how they died.
So Detective Beckstrom pressed her on whether the babies were actually born alive, and under that pressure, her defensive lie finally collapsed. She just couldn't maintain the facade that they were all stillborn miscarriages anymore. The horrific confession finally spilled out. Megan admitted that while one baby might have been dead at birth, she actively murdered the other 6. She confessed to smothering or strangling them immediately after birth, claiming she was just too scared and too deep into her drug addiction to care for them.
Now, naturally, you and the detectives are probably asking the exact same question. What about the husband? Detectives obviously suspected Darren West as a potential accomplice. I mean, how on earth could a man live with his wife for a decade, sleep in the exact same bed, and not notice multiple, full-term pregnancies? Well, Megan claims she hid the pregnancies from everyone, wearing baggy clothes, and just didn't show much. But detectives had to be absolutely certain Darren wasn't involved in the murders or the cover-up.
So Darren was brought in for questioning, and you guys, his interrogation was deeply emotional. He buried his face in his hands and just sobbed uncontrollably when he was told there were 7 babies and that Megan claimed he was the father of all of them. He maintained that due to his own rampant drug use at the time and Megan's extreme deception, he was completely oblivious. He knew of maybe one miscarriage, but the idea that his wife was repeatedly giving birth and murdering the children in their own home, it completely broke him. Even though it's incredibly hard to fathom that level of ignorance, detectives realized that logically, Darren's actions pointed entirely to his innocence. Think about it. If Darren had known about the bodies, he never would have aggressively initiated cleaning out that specific garage on his very first day out of prison. He was the one who called 911 immediately upon finding the first box, and he demanded the police come to the house even when Megan was actively pleading with him on the phone to keep them away.
To put any lingering doubts to rest, the hard forensic evidence completely exonerated Darren. The crime lab analyzed all the electrical tape, the duct tape, and the plastic bags. The result? Fingerprints belonging only to Megan. There was not a single trace of Darren found on any of the packaging. A DNA test confirmed exactly what Megan said. Darren was indeed the biological father of all 7. The science proved without a doubt that Megan acted entirely alone in packaging and hiding the victims. So, Darren was released. With the physical evidence, the confessions, and the forensics all perfectly aligned, the legal system responded pretty swiftly. On February 12, 2015, Megan Huntsman stood in court and formally pleaded guilty to 6 counts of first-degree murder. The 7th baby was outside the statute of limitations or a confirmed stillborn, but for the 6 she admitted to suffocating and strangling, she accepted full legal responsibility. It finally closed one of the absolute darkest chapters in local law enforcement history.
The judge handed down the maximum possible penalty allowed by law. Megan was sentenced to 6 terms of 5 years to life, and the absolutely crucial detail here is that they are to be served consecutively, back to back. This sentencing structure ensures that Megan Huntsman will spend the rest of her natural life in a prison cell, facing the consequences for the unfathomable atrocities she committed inside that garage.
So, the timeline is solved, the forensics are clear, and the perpetrator is behind bars. But the deepest psychological mystery still remains. Megan blamed the haze of a severe methamphetamine addiction, sure. But the systematic, calculated nature of hiding 7 bodies over 10 years suggests something far more complex. It leaves us with a truly chilling question to ponder. Was it really just the drugs, or is there a much darker, unexplained motive we'll never uncover inside that house of horrors? Think about that. And thanks for joining me as we unpack this incredible explainer.
And that's the story behind this shocking case. What do you think really happened? Was justice served, or are there still unanswered questions waiting to be solved? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this investigation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new case from Dark Case Diaries. Until next time, stay curious, stay alert, and remember, every case has a secret. Thanks for watching.